You've probably heard the story of Moses and the 10 plagues of Egypt. I mean, it's one of the big ones, right? Staffs turning into snakes, rivers of blood, freeing the Israelites. But what if there's a deeper logic to it all? We're about to peel back the layers on this famous story and see what's really going on just beneath the surface.
So right away, you have to ask a pretty obvious question. If the whole point was just to get the Israelites out of Egypt, why all the drama? An all-powerful God could have just snapped his fingers, right? So why the 10-part spectacle?
Well, according to Old Testament scholar Dr. John Oswalt, the answer is that getting the Israelites out was actually kind of the secondary goal. The main point was something so much bigger. The whole series of events was designed to be an act of revelation, to show everyone involved a fundamental truth about how the world actually works.
And we don't even have to guess, because the story itself gives us a mission statement. Right there in Exodus, it says the plagues happened so that the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. Notice that. This wasn't just a show for the Israelites. It was for the Egyptians, for Pharaoh himself. But what does it really mean to know God in this context?
See, in the Bible, knowing isn't like knowing a trivia fact, like the capital of Nebraska. It's a deep, personal knowledge that comes from experience. It's an awareness of reality that you've actually lived through. The plagues were designed to give both the Egyptians and the Israelites a direct, undeniable, and frankly unforgettable experience of who God really is.
So how exactly did this revelation work? Well, this wasn't just a series of random destructive acts. It was a systematic, targeted takedown of the entire Egyptian religious system. It wasn't a war on people, but on their gods and their whole understanding of reality.
Okay, let's just take the first plague. For Egyptians, the Nile River was everything. It was the source of life, food, prosperity. Their god of the Nile, Happy, was a huge deal. So when Moses turns the Nile into blood, it's not just a disaster, it's a powerful theological punch to the gut. The very thing they worshipped as the source of life was now the source of death.
And this pattern just keeps on going. Frogs, they can live in water and on land. They were a symbol of this dual life, this resurrection the Egyptians deeply believed in. God turns them into a disgusting nuisance. Sacred insects that seem to bring life out of nothing, God turns them into a curse. Plague by plague, something the Egyptians worshipped as a source of power and life gets turned on its head.
But here's the thing. Pharaoh wasn't just standing by and watching. He had his own power players, his magicians and sorcerers. And at first, it looked like they might actually be a match for Moses.
This is one of the most fascinating twists in the story. Aaron's staff turns into a snake. The magicians do it too. Water to blood? They can do that. Frogs everywhere? No problem. And you have to wonder, why? Why would God even allow his miracles to be counterfeited like that?
Well, it seems it was a brilliant strategic move. By letting the magicians have some early success, God basically set up a head-to-head competition. This made it impossible for Pharaoh to just wave it all away and say, oh, that's just some fancy black magic we haven't seen before. And then the rug gets pulled out from under them. The magicians could copy the big, flashy stuff, but when it came to the plague of gnats, tiny little insects, they just couldn't. They hit a wall. And in that moment of failure, they have to turn to Pharaoh and admit it. This is the finger of God. They knew the difference between their tricks and the real deal. The "it's just magic" excuse was officially gone. Now, even after his own experts tap out, Pharaoh keeps resisting. And this leads us to one of the most challenging and frankly debated ideas in the whole story: the hardening of Pharaoh's heart.
If you read the text closely, you'll see 3 different phrases used to describe this. Sometimes, it just says Pharaoh's heart became hard, almost like a condition. Other times it says Pharaoh hardened his own heart, making it a clear act of his will. And then you get the tough one. The Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. These aren't contradictions. They're 3 different ways of looking at the same tragic process.
So here's the crucial takeaway. This isn't about God being a puppet master, forcing Pharaoh to do something against his will. It's about a deep truth. Our choices have consequences. They create a kind of momentum. Pharaoh kept choosing pride and resistance, and eventually he got to a point where he couldn't choose anything else. His heart became so hard that he lost the freedom to be soft. And God, in a sense, just confirmed the path Pharaoh had already furiously carved out for himself.
So as the plagues get worse and worse, Pharaoh realizes he can't win with a show of force. So he switches tactics.
He tries to negotiate. He tries to cut a deal with the creator of the universe.
And you can just hear him trying to stay in control, right? He says things like, all right, fine, you can sacrifice, but you have to do it here, in Egypt, where I can keep an eye on you. When that doesn't fly, he tries, okay, go into the wilderness. Just, don't go too far. He's always looking for a compromise where he still has the upper hand. What Pharaoh's doing here is just so human. We all kind of get this. He wants the benefit, he wants the plagues to stop, but he doesn't want to surrender control. He's trying to have it both ways. Get God's blessing, but stay in the driver's seat.
And it's this stubborn refusal to surrender, this constant attempt to negotiate, that finally pulls back the curtain on what this whole showdown is really about. It reveals what God was after the whole time.
Dr. Oswalt uses this really powerful analogy. He says it's like a marriage proposal. When you ask someone to marry you, you're not asking for what they can do for you, cook your meals or fix your car. You want them, all of them. In the same way, God isn't looking for a deal. He doesn't want a few sacrifices or a little bit of obedience. He wants a relationship.
And that is the ultimate point of the 10 plagues. The goal was never just to negotiate a contract for their release. It was to smash the whole framework of negotiation and control, and to open the door to a relationship built on surrender and love. Freedom wasn't the end goal, it was just the beginning.
And all of this leaves us with a really big idea to think about. Pharaoh was stuck in the world of negotiation, always trying to manage the terms. But the story seems to be saying that real life, real freedom, only starts when we stop negotiating, which makes you wonder, what really is the difference between a negotiation and a relationship? And which one are we choosing in our own lives?